Hi, we're Ariel,
And Michelle,
and
and
we're
we're
the
the
Board
Board
Game
Game
Tutors,
Tutors.
and we're going to be going over today the first faction that we're going to cover, and the Alliances, Summoner Wars Alliances set. It's called the Vargath Vanguards. And so let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So this deck's summoner is named Moyra Skylark, as you see at the top of this card, and this card shows our starting setup for the Vargath Vanguards. On the other side of the card, it has all of the events listed, all the event cards that are in this deck, and it gives you everything that you do on every turn of the game. And there's a wall from the Vargath Vanguards faction. And here's our summoner, Moyra Skylark. She has an attack value of 3, is a melee fighter, and has 7 hit points, and her special ability is called Divine Presence. At the beginning of your turn, choose one common unit you control within 2 spaces of Moyra Skylark. Add 1 to that unit's attack value until the end of this turn, and you may immediately move that unit up to 1 space. So it's important to remember here this happens at the very beginning of your turn, so it can only apply to a common unit that starts out the turn within 2 spaces of Moyra.
And that counts through walls, 2 spaces away from her. And so the Divine Presence would give this defender, who we haven't explained yet, but we're going to in a sec, not 1 die, but 2 dice. And if you want, you can move that defender as part of Divine Presence 1 space. So here, or here, or here. That doesn't matter. That's just where it would go.
And then during movement phase, you'll have a chance to move again like normal.
So yeah, they would move 1 space, and then they would move possibly 2 more spaces, depending upon what you want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Then we have, so there he is, the defender. So he's the first common we're going to talk about. He costs 1 magic to summon, has an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 2 hit points. And his special ability is called Hold the Line. Now, at first we were kind of confused by this one because it seemed kind of wordy when we read it, but we think we found a good thematic way to understand what's happening here. So first I'll read you the description. When an opponent rolls to attack a friendly Vargath Vanguard common unit adjacent to a unit with the Hold the Line ability that you control, increase the die result needed to roll a hit by 1 for each Vargath Vanguard unit you control adjacent to the attacked unit. So here we would need a defender and some other common unit next to him.
Let's do a simple example first.
Okay. So there's a defender, there's a crusader, they're adjacent. So Hold the Line comes into play here. The way we can imagine it is it's as if the defender shouted,
"Hold the line!"
And so all of the units that are adjacent to the unit that's being attacked essentially participate in defending it, so it makes it that much harder for someone to attack that unit.
You can imagine people linking their arms together with the common unit that is being attacked.
So here there's just the one defender who's holding the line for the crusader, and so it would take 1 more, +1 on the die in order to attack this crusader. So you need to get a 4, 5, or 6 rather than 3, 4, 5, or 6.
So in this example, if an enemy unit was attacking this crusader, like Michelle said, 3, 4, 5s, and 6s are normal hits. But since this crusader has 1 defender next to it, he yelled "Hold the line," and so this crusader is no longer affected by 3s.
Mm-hmm.
He would only be affected by 4, 5s, and 6s. Now let's say there was another unit. It doesn't have to be a common unit. It could be a champion, it could be a summoner. It doesn't matter. But let's just use this example. Now there are 2 units next to this crusader. This would no longer be affected by 3s or 4s. 5s or 6s are all that would matter against this crusader. And that would make him pretty tough because he has 3 hit points.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you had multiple defenders, let's say you had a defender. So in this instance, this defender has no defender next to him. So he would not benefit from Hold the Line. For a defender to benefit from Hold the Line, he would need to have another defender somewhere adjacent to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
And then they would hold the line for each other.
Right. So in this example here, let's ignore Moyra for a sec. This crusader and this cherubim would both be unaffected by die results of 3 because of the defender holding the line for them. However, the defender is the weak spot in this line. So enemies could attack your defender first, kill him, and then now this crusader and this cherubim are no longer defended by him.
Yeah, so you have to keep placement in mind when you're using the defender's special ability.
Okay. Do you want to go the crusader first or the cherubim first?
Let's talk about the cherubim.
Okay.
So the cherubim costs 1 magic, has an attack value of 1, is a ranged fighter, and has 1 hit point. And his special ability is called Light of Foot. When moving this cherubim during your movement phase, you may move it 1 additional space. This cherubim may move through other units, but must end its move on an unoccupied space. So this one's pretty simple. You can see in the picture and imagine the cherubim's flying, so he can go a little farther, and he can go over other people because he just flies over them. That works for any unit, but not for walls.
Right. So walls, the cherubim cannot fly over walls, but in this example, the cherubim, as a possible movement, could go 1, 2, 3 in front of this defender. Basically, just go over that common unit or champion unit, and basically any units, even summoners. So this cherubim can just fly around, move around rather quickly because she or he, I'm not sure, has 3 movement, and so yeah. And
they just have to end their move on an unoccupied space, so they can't ever land and share a space.
Yeah, if the cherubim started out here, it could not land on that defender because that space has already been taken.
Next, we have the Crusader. He costs 2 magic, has an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 3 hit points. His special ability is called Shining Aura. Add 1 to the attack value of every other common or champion unit you control with the word light in their ability name that is within 2 spaces of 1 or more Crusaders you control. So this applies to Cherubim, which we just talked about, and it also applies to, right here, you can see our next champion unit that we're going to talk about. His ability is called Return to the Light. So in this deck, so it has light in there. So in this deck, Father Benjamin and the Cherubim are the ones that can benefit from the Crusader's Shining Aura.
So it says add 1 to the attack value. So this Crusader, if it attacks somebody within 2 spaces of a Crusader,
the cherubim.
If the cherubim attacks anybody and is currently within 2 spaces of any Crusader, so
it doesn't matter how many.
They would get 1 more die. So this cherubim would roll 2 dice. And for example, same thing would apply to Father Benjamin because he also has light in his name, and he would roll, instead of 2 dice, he would roll 3.
So pretty simple. So now we have our 3 champion units. First is Father Benjamin. He costs 5 magic, rolls 2 dice, is a ranged fighter, and has 4 hit points. So that's not a lot of hit points for a champion, but he also isn't terribly expensive. And as we'll see, he has a very, very interesting, helpful special ability. So there are kind of 2 parts to his special ability called Return to the Light. During your event phase, you may reveal this card from your hand and place it on the bottom of your draw pile. When Father Benjamin is destroyed by any opponent, you may spend up to 4 magic points. For each magic point spent in this way, remove 1 wound marker from your summoner. So the first part of that is basically saying if you want to save him, if you get him early on, and you want to save him for the end of the game, because obviously that would be a good time to remove wounds from your summoner, you have the option of doing so by simply revealing that you have this card and putting during your event phase and putting it at the bottom of your draw pile. And then once he's on the board, when he's killed, he has to be killed by an opponent for this to happen. So you can't surround him and kill him yourself. That might seem like an easy way to heal your summoner, but they don't allow you to do that. That could be pretty unbalanced, of course. So when he's destroyed, you can spend 1, 2, 3, or 4 magic points. And for every one of those magic points that you spend, you are healing Moyra. So here's an example for that.
So you have 3 magic, you got rid of 3 wounds, you can get rid of 3 wounds, or you can get rid of 4 wounds if you have all the magic to do so.
And of course, you need to have that magic in your pile already when this happens.
And this only happens when he is destroyed by an enemy unit. So that's that. Okay.
Next champion is Kayla. Kayla costs 7 magic, rolls 3 dice, is a melee fighter, and has 6 hit points, and her ability is called Form Rank. At the beginning of your movement phase, you may place 1 Vargath Vanguard common unit you control adjacent to Kayla. So this is at the beginning of your movement phase before you've done any other movements, which means you still have all of your normal movements left. So Kayla would be somewhere on the board, like if she was maybe all the way forward here. Then she can choose another common unit of hers, from her side that's on the board, like this defender, and she can move him all the way out adjacent to her. So he could go here, or here, or here, or in front.
And that's a free movement. So you can use that 2 ways, really, if you really wanted to. Let's say Kayla needed more help and wanted some more help with fighting on the enemy side of the battlefield, you can use Kayla's form rank ability to pull this defender out of the back and help her in the fight. Or you could do just the opposite. Let's say Kayla was somewhere back here, and you had a common over here. Let's say this defender always was already wounded for 1. But you need to get him out of the action because he is not doing so well. You can use that to grab him and pull him back to your line.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, that defender is not so vulnerable anymore.
Yep.
So you can use it both ways.
Okay. And then our third champion.
And movement obviously still happens after this.
Right.
That's a free movement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then our third champion is Corbolden. He costs 6 magic, has an attack of 1, is a ranged fighter, and has 6 hit points. So an attack value of 1 seems pretty low for a champion, but this is where his special ability comes into play. It's called Electrocute. When Corbolden attacks an adjacent unit and inflicts a wound, you may immediately discard 1 card from your hand. If you do so, add 2 additional wound markers to the attacked unit. So keep in mind, Corbolden has to be adjacent to the unit that he's attacking, and he has to successfully roll a die and inflict a wound. And then, if you want to, and if you have a card in your hand, you can discard that card and automatically get 2 more wounds on the attacked unit. So this is kind of an interesting push your luck element to the game. You only have to roll 1 die, but it has to be successful, and that will let you get in 3 hits right away from that 1 successful die roll.
And yeah, it can work against anyone. It can work against a summoner. It can work an enemy summoner. It can work against an enemy champion. It can work against enemy commons. Obviously, for example, this would be a pretty poor matchup. Not a really good example. Well, actually, completely useless, actually. Yeah, let's do another one. Sorry, that was not great.
So say he attacked this defender.
If he was an enemy. Has 2 hit points. So you might use Electrocute to kill him if you got 1 successful die roll, but you essentially would do 1 extra damage that was basically being wasted, and you do have to pay the magic for it. So if you're fighting against units that only have 2, unless that really is a unit that's in danger of hurting your summoner or causing you some problems, you might not want to use it for that. Most likely you want to use it against champions where they have 6 hit points and you just took out half their life by using Corbolden's move successfully.
Mm-hmm. And then something else interesting with Corbolden is that this puts one of your cards into your discard pile. And we're going to get to an event card where this could be helpful because you actually need certain cards in your discard pile for the event card to work out.
Right. So we'll move on to that in a second.
So here we are. Actually, this is the one we're talking about. So here's the first event card. It's called Change Form. Choose 1 common Vargath Vanguard unit in your discard pile. Your summoner gains the name and ability of the chosen unit in addition to its own name and ability until the beginning of your next turn. So in order to do this, you have to have at least 1 common Vargath Vanguard unit in your discard pile, which means at some point you built it for magic and then discarded it after spending it for magic, or you used Corbolden's ability like we just talked about, and that let you put a card in your discard. So you have to refer to one of your own common units in your discard pile in order to make Change Form work.
Mm-hmm. And then Moyra would gain the name and the special ability of that card. So to make Change Form really useful for you, because you have no idea when you're going to get the Change Form card. Obviously, you have 3 copies of it in your deck. So what you want to do, kind of early in the game, you don't have to rush really hard, but you want to have at least 1 defender, at least 1 cherubim, and at least 1 crusader into your discard pile. Doesn't matter. It might be because you built that defender for magic and then you use that to summon somebody else, or you use Corbolden's skill and you did that instead and discarded the card that way. This leaves Moyra a lot of options because now she can pretend she can be a cherubim for 1 turn and move 3 spaces, so charge into the fight or leave it really quickly if need be. Defender, she could copy the defender's ability and then boost other commons around her and make them harder to kill. So if she has some commons defending her, she can make them stronger and harder to kill. And she could also pretend to be a crusader. Not pretend, but she could be a crusader for 1 turn. It sounds like a funny thing to say. And make cherubim who are close to her within 2 spaces stronger at attacking enemy units.
Mm-hmm. And I had one game recently where I actually won the game using change form because Moyra was able to imitate a cherubim, go forward 3 spaces, and get right in the face of the enemy summoner. And then she had a crusader close enough so that because she was like a cherubim, she was boosted by that crusader to roll 4 dice because she got 1 extra die. And all 4 of those were successful, and she was able, that was what she needed to kill the enemy summoner. So I won the game that way.
So yeah, you can definitely come up with some pretty strong upsets all of a sudden in a game because if your opponent is not paying careful attention to what units you have put in your discard pile, you can totally come out of nowhere and attack them or run away or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your imagination is the only limitation.
All right, so this event card is called Divine Intervention. This card is not played during your event phase. Instead, play this card whenever a common or champion unit you control receives any number of wound markers. Ignore those wound markers and place 1 wound marker on your summoner. So this one's interesting, especially for someone like me. I always try really hard to protect my summoner, and so it seems pretty counterintuitive to me to place a wound on my summoner. But she does have 7 hit points, and so you really have to evaluate what point you're at in the game. This could be really helpful for protecting, especially a champion or another unit that you really need to keep alive at that given moment. It could be receiving any number of wounds from an attack, and you can ignore them all and place just 1 wound on your summoner.
So, and another important clarification point about this card, because it doesn't say it on it, but you might wonder about this. For example, Corbolden and let's say Moira wanted to protect Corbolden from getting 3 damage on 1 turn. And let's also say, I can't reach right now, but let's pretend Corbolden was on the far side of the board doing damage to the enemy summoner, and you wanted to prevent him from getting those 3 damage, because that's awfully crippling to his hit points. What you can do, even though he's on the other side of the board, okay, I can't reach right now, but if he was on the other side of the board, you can still do this Divine Intervention event card and play it during your enemy's attack phase, and not give him 3 wounds, but give her 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a good example of your champions getting really pounded, and in 1 attack, only in 1 attack, not in 2 separate attacks or 3 separate attacks, you can cancel that damage with 1 Divine Intervention card.
Mm-hmm. And there are 3 of those, so that can happen a few different times.
And obviously you don't want to do that too often, because then your summoner just got 3 wounds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Blinding Light is the next event card. Until the beginning of your next turn, when an opponent rolls to attack your summoner, or a unit you control within 2 spaces of your summoner, that unit only receives wound markers from die results of 5 or higher during that attack. So you can imagine that Moira is casting some sort of light out from her. It's a blinding light, so it makes it hard for your enemies to see. So any of your units that are close enough to your summoner or your summoner herself are harder to hit, so people can only hit them if they roll a 5 or a 6.
Okay, and so you might use this card if you were going on an offensive and going after the opponent's summoner, but you want to use this card wisely because it's within 2 spaces of Moira, and it works on anybody within 2 spaces. So it could be someone here, 2 spaces, here, that's obviously 1 space away, here, or even here. Mm-hmm. So if you moved forward and you had a whole group of soldiers, including Moira, she could just be basically the center focal point of your army, and you could just push forward, and they would all be harder to kill. And if you also have defenders in that tightly knitted mesh of soldiers, that would make some of the common units even harder to kill.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay. And then this event card is called Lightning Strike, and it's pretty straightforward. Choose 1. Either place 2 wound markers on a common or champion unit within 3 spaces of your summoner, or place 4 wound markers on a wall card within 3 spaces of your summoner. So you choose either of these, and then you automatically place wounds without having to roll dice or anything like that. At one point recently, I used this there was a champion that I was fighting who you always had to roll a 5 or a 6 to hit him, and that can be pretty hard, and he was threatening my summoner. So it was really nice. I was able to play this card and just automatically put 2 wounds on him without having to roll dice to see whether the attack would work. So this card also can be very beneficial.
And that was the last event card. And so, yeah, this deck, even though we consider it to be one of the easier decks in the Alliances set. It's still rather complicated, so there are plenty of combinations that you can put together using Crusaders with Cherubim, using Defenders with any of the other two common units to protect them and keep them stronger and harder to kill. So, and yeah, Moyra is no slouch either. She takes her deal of damage, and she can take a fair amount of damage as well with 7 hit points.
Yeah, and she rolls 3 dice, so you do want to take advantage of her attack value as much as you can.
So yeah, that was Vargath Vanguards. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more, we will be uploading the rest of the Summoner Wars Alliances set shortly and on a regular basis. And we'll keep updating our channel with more videos of this game and more games.
So please subscribe if you're interested, and thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, we'll see you in all of our other videos.
All right, bye.
Bye.